Do you know AI portraits? If so, you may know that while plenty flattering, they are hardly impeccable. In fact, they are rife with imperfections like this, or this, or this. Don't accept that. Here's how to fix it. All right, so here's an AI avatar of me, in case you didn't recognize me. I mean, after all, I've never had this much head hair in my life. So it's a little bit on the flattering side, I would say. It's one of the better ones in terms of structurally, in terms of the way it actually looks. But it's not without its problems. So notice that we've got actually quite a few problems that I've highlighted here. We've got this little kind of thing going on in my ear. We have all these goobers above my head, so we'll fix those. So I'm just highlighting a few of them. We have this jawline that needs some work. That's a little bit tricky, by the way. Then we have this mustache going down here to nowhere. A couple of kind of blobby hairs over here on the left-hand side. My left eye, actually my right, but it's the left eye here in the image, is a mess. And then what is the story behind this image? Obviously, it's an adventure kind of fantasy AI, but am I looking at a portal? And is it on a boat, which would be feasible? Or am I supposed to be on a spaceship? Actually, without any glass separating me from a fairly harsh environment. But whatever it is, notice that this right here at the bottom, this doesn't really work down here. We've got this edge that doesn't unite with the other side. And then we have a lot of other stuff. If you felt like dealing with it, you're going to see this kind of stuff going on as well. I'm not going to take care of that. But anyway, what I'm ultimately going to turn it into this thing right here. So all the details I just show you have been retouched. Most obviously the eye, you can see, is now looking in the right direction. Those blobby hairs are gone and so forth. Better jawline. And if such a thing is possible. And then I went ahead and colorized it, by the way, which is really, I'm telling you, I found this whole process to be edifying, so I hope you do as well. So here we go. I'm going to go and switch over to the original and turn off the problems layer because we don't need it. And then I'll just go ahead and zoom in, let's say on that little, very slight problem in the ear. And what you might do, and I would definitely recommend it, is to go over to the spot healing brush. That's going to work really well for you. Except don't just start digging in and painting away, because if you were to do that, then the problem, of course, would be that that would be a destructive modification. So you would actually be permanently modifying pixels. That's not what we want. What we want to do is to create a new layer. So I'll press Control-Shift-N, Command-Shift-N on the Mac to create that layer like so, bring up the new layer dialog box, and I'll call this layer healing. Click OK or whatever, and then I will, if you just start painting right now, it wouldn't really work, would it? Because, well, that's a very nice line, Deke. But here's the real problem. It didn't have anything to source from right there. That's why I didn't get rid of that stuff. And that's because I'm only sampling from the active layer by default. So I'll undo that change. Didn't really do anything. And then I'll go up to the options bar and turn on sample all layers, which is a great option. And that way you can sample from the layers below. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger by pressing the right bracket key a few times, and then I'll just go ahead and heal over that area, maybe here as well. And that's good enough. Now for the little blobs right here. And so I'll get rid of them. I guess technically they're goobers. And so I'm not sure what value they have. If this was painted by a human being, I would give it a break. I would just say, okay, well, artistic license or something. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but hey, you know what? Not everything has to be literal, right? And then this thing I want to kind of get rid of. I'm just going to kind of paint at it because no matter what, I'm going to kind of source from around the brush. That's how it works, right? It's trying to, the spot healing brush is trying to take content aware stuff, so pixels from all over the image, and then bring them home right where you go ahead and click. But it's also trying to reconcile that, content aware pixels, those source pixels, with the stuff that you're painting against. So if you're just painting out in the open, it's going to work out really well. If you're painting next to something like here, right here, it's not necessarily always going to work out so well. You got to keep a very careful eye out. Notice right there, can you see that? We've got a little bit of pink that grew out of this area into the yellowness. I don't want that, so I'm going to undo that change. And if you run into that, just make your brush smaller. Try to stay away from the bad stuff and see if you can get, yeah, there you go. You can get kind of better results. All right, so that's pretty easy, I would think. What else did I mention was a problem? This jawline. Not so easy, by the way. for that same reason I was just talking about, because I have to go in. Let's say in particular, I want to get rid of this stuff right here. Well, I've got to go kind of next to that purple area right there. And that's probably, notice that's probably going to bring out some badness, in which case just paint over it. And this isn't always going to work. I'm not suggesting, look, see, it didn't. But it is going to give you different results every time you paint. So with the spot healing brush, you can, if something goes terribly wrong, then you can undo and reapproach and that kind of stuff. Or you can just keep painting over this stuff until it just stops being a problem. Now, if you never really get it to stop being a problem, like me, it's not working out for me at all. Here, let's try something. You never know. Right? If I paint a pixel differently than, I practiced and stuff, I'm going to get different results. But let's try the regular healing brush tool, which requires a source, right? I've got to set a source to start by pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and clicking, let's say right about there, to make that the source. And then I'll go ahead and increase my brush size again, and I'll paint. Now, as I paint next to this, I should be seeing a preview of what's going on. Why am I not? Well, let's check, shall we? Oh, I know why. I was going to completely mislead you. Look at the sample option up here. So, unfortunately, it's a small design problem in my opinion. But, it's not a sample all layers checkbox. It's actually more than that. So maybe, maybe the spot healing brush is a problem. You can sample the current layer, which isn't going to do you any good. You just saw that there was nothing to sample from, or current layer and below, which is good enough for this, or all layers. So I'll just go current layer and below. Oh, now I'm seeing a preview inside my brush, and now I'll paint. Oh. What is that? What is that kind of bleed? It's like the painting is wet, and I'm attaching it. We're attacking it, that is, with some watercolor. Well, here's the problem. It's this guy right here, diffusion. Do you see that? So if you increase the diffusion value to its maximum, which happily, no, it's not 8. Watch this. It's 7. An integer between 1 and 7 is required. Makes a lot of sense, but I'm sure there's some underlying reason. But if you do that, if you increase the diffusion value, notice that it's gonna get worse. Ooh, I liked how it does it kind of on the fly. That's cool. Anyway, so what you want to do, probably where this is concerned, this might work. Let's take the diffusion value down. Actually, let's take it to 1 and see what we get. Now, that means it's not going to match on the other side of this brush stroke very well either. Can you see that? How we have some problems right there. So now, let's create the diffusion value. I'll just change it to its default, which is 5. And try again right there. Actually, Alt-click. Option click on the Mac to set a source and see if we can just paint over this to get some smoother transitions. Try again, because I don't want to end up duplicating that detail right there. And oops, that's no good. I can't get that close, so I've got to stay pretty far away in order to get something resembling smooth results. Another way to work, by the way, is to switch the mode to, what is it? Because I don't work this way very often, replace. Which what it does is it just turns the healing brush into the clone stamp tool. That's all it does. And clone stamp tool without any other blend modes. So you can choose to replace, and that way you're just going to replace the pixels like so, and you're not going to do any blending whatsoever. That doesn't look right, but it is an option. And another option, another very underused, overlooked option, in my opinion, is this guy right here, the smudge tool. Now, where I find it to be useful is it'll actually make the brush bigger by pressing the right bracket key, is for just making tiny little modifications. Notice that. Just drag just a few things, just a little bit at a time, just to round off some of the transitions. It's not like smear the lips around or something like that. It's just tiny little changes. All right, let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. So this is before jaw stuff going on right there, and this is after. So I think that's better. Let's attack the hair now, shall we? Starting with, well, what? Starting with what? This is all hard, by the way. But let's create a new layer. And so I'll press Control-Shift-N, Command-Shift-N on the Mac, and I'll just call it hair. It's not hard, by the way. It's tricky. All right, so we've established this independent layer once again, and we're sampling from all the layers. Oh, there's another sample all layers checkbox associated with the smudge tool, by the way, so you can turn that on if you like. All right, so here we go. Let's try this. Why don't we? Well, at some point you may just want to switch to the clone stamp tool. And that way you're not going to get any real interaction, right? It's not going to try to heal things. But let's start here. It's also not going to really do much where this is concerned. Am I not? Once again, I'm sampling from the current layer. Let's do current layer and below and see. Now notice it's got a soft edge. The healing brush by default has a hard edge, whereas the clone stamp tool by default has a soft edge. So you can do that. You can try that kind of stuff. I don't really think it's the best way to go in this case. But here, let's try it a little bit. And then, no, let's not. No. I was going to burn it in there using the burn tool and stuff like that. I'm not going to do that. Let's try this. Let's see if I can make this work. Grab the healing brush tool again. Now it's all about where you sample. So let's say I sample right here. This guy's already set to current layer and below. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and paint over this area. Oh, I'm sitting there wondering where the diffusion value went. Where'd it go? Does anybody see it? Well, here's the problem. I got to change mode back to normal. So definitely want to do that. And then, okay, so I'm going to sample from this part of the mustache down here a little bit like so. And this is actually working a little bit better than I anticipated. If something like that were to work for you, obviously you're going to work on it. You may not have any facial hair. You may be a woman, for example, or somebody who shaves. But I'll go ahead and sample right here in my beard thing and go ahead and my Van Dyke or whatever it was. And I'll just go ahead and paint around here. And then I'll kind of paint. Let's see what happens if I paint next to it, because this kind of stuff I just want to get rid of. And so I'll just paint around the mustache thing and see how it ends up working. It's looking pretty tragic, of course. In which case you could do some of the other work that I was talking about. Like I'm sorry, I did that very quickly. I'll grab the smudge tool once again and see if I can get that to work a little bit. Actually, it's not too bad. The transitions on the outside are terrible. I realize that. Oh, definitely don't want to smear down like this, because I'll duplicate a bunch of stuff in the mouth. And then I might just try kind of going back and forth sometimes with the smudge tool, like just kind of back and forth like that. Can work. Not wonders, but it can work. And then let's try going back to the healing brush again. And notice this diffusion value. Let's take it down to 2. I don't know. It's kind of some arbitrary changes. And, or that is, it's kind of trail and there stuff. And then I will alt click right there and try some more. And it's just continuing to smear all this stuff outward, which is not what I want. And so I'll go ahead and paint this inward like so with the smudge tool is what I'm doing here. And, with this particular stuff, I would not recommend that you get too lost in the details, because once you zoom back out, you might want to try kind of dodging in that area. But once you zoom back out, it may end up actually looking just as good as any of the other details inside of the avatar. So anyway, I don't want to belabor this. Obviously, this isn't quite what I want it to be. And so I could grab the clone stamp tool or something along those lines, and I could try sourcing here, and I could press the 5 key to take the opacity, see up here, down to 50% up in the options bar. And then I'll just try painting. And another thing you can do, by the way, when you're working static like this is it's non-destructive because we're on an independent layer, but it is static because we are editing pixels. In which case, you can fade it further by going up to the edit menu and choosing this command that you might not even know exists. Fade clone stamp. It's going to fade the last static modification that you made. So in our case, it would be this. And look, it says 50%. Isn't that something? I could take the percentage upward if I wanted to, or I could fade it downward. It's a pretty terrific option. It's been part of Photoshop forever. And let's split the difference at 33%, and I'll click OK. All right. What's more interesting is the eye. I want to make sure that you see the eye, if nothing else. Control-Shift-N, Command-Shift-N on the Mac, call this guy eye, and now we got a new layer called eye. You can see that, and what I'm going to do is switch to the healing brush once again, and I want to take this detail right here. So notice that this right eye is looking to the left, right? It's looking over here. Whereas this guy is looking straight at me. I think it's looking at my forehead, and so I'm cross-eyed. And also, it doesn't really have any indication. This eye doesn't work. And so I'll Alt or Option click right there to sample, just so I know where I'm starting. And I'm going to bring it in over here like so. And notice that diffusion. Notice how the brush is kind of painting in the detail on the fly. All right. Couple of problems. One is that it's the same size. So like this eye, the highlights in this eye, the white of the eye over here on the left should be smaller, because it's slightly farther away and it needs to be at a different angle. So I'll undo that change. I'm going to take the diffusion value back to 5, just because that's the default. I'll go to the window menu and choose, I feel like I'm just showing a lot of you a bunch of things you haven't seen before. I hope. Clone source. This is not the primary purpose of this panel. I'm not going to even go into what the primary purpose of this panel is, but it does allow you to transform the source point as you paint. It's mind-blowing and awesome. And so what I'm going to do, notice the values are linked together, width and height right there. I'm just going to change them to 90 so that we have just a little bit of a smaller white of the eye going on over here. And notice the diffusion. Did you see that? See how it's diffusing on the fly, how it's kind of merging with the new location over here, the destination. Undo. Because what I want to do is rotate as well. Now, this one's really hard to figure out. I'm not going to let you fool around with this one. I'm just going to change it to -10 degrees, which is going to what? It's going to rotate counterclockwise. I believe that's true. Why don't I try it on my forehead so we can see? Yeah, see how it's rotated counterclockwise compared to if I take it back down to 0 and paint on my forehead some more, you can see that it's more clockwise. Rotated clockwise. Anyway, I'll undo those changes. Obviously, I don't want that. So we'll go with -10 degrees. This is what I figured out. Worked out really well. And then I just want you to watch this diffusion happening on the fly. See how as I paint, it becomes more and more opaque in this area. I'm a little low, so I'll try that again. Make sure the align checkbox is off, by the way, if you're trying to rematch the source with the destination. So I'll start a little higher, and then I'll go down like that. That looks good. See that diffusion occurring on the fly. And I'll paint into the white of the eye, so I have a matching, highlight of the pupil is what I'm talking about. So I have a matching pupil like so, matching highlight right there. And now what I'm going to do, this is another awesome retouching tool, especially for this kind of graphical retouching work. It's this guy right here, the history brush. And what I want to do is paint back in some stuff from the past. And so I'll go ahead and hide clone source there. Actually, what I'll do is go to the window menu. This will hide it automatically, and choose history. And that'll go ahead and bring up the history panel so I can see, a million smudges right there. And by a million, I mean like 7 or something. And then I'll set my history brush source state to new layer right before the healing brush that I just applied. And now I'll increase the size of my brush a little bit. Right click so you can see by default the hardness is set to 0%. Generally, that is what you want. And then you can just kind of paint that away a little bit. And that's not working out so well. But so you know what you can do? Now you can set the previous state as the source state, and you can increase the hardness. I just told you how great it was to have a soft brush, but in this case, I think I'll go with something like 70%. And then I'll paint back in that new highlight inside the pupil like so. And then I'll zoom out so that we can have a little perspective here by pressing Control-0, Command-0 on the Mac, so that you can see that both of the eyes are now looking in the same direction. Are you liking this? I hope so, because I'm slinging some advanced retouching wizardry. Want to see more? Go to patreon.com/Deke now. I'm Deke, by the way. This is Now. Back to me, Deke. Okay, so what about those big blobby old hairs right over here? Well, and there's some other kind of details that are messed up. nothing's perfect about this hair. It's all very gestural. But let's switch to the healing layer. No, hair. I'll switch to the hair layer for a moment. And I'll return to that. Let's start with the spot healing brush tool, which is not affected by the clone stamp tool, by the clone source panel, by the way. But if you were I don't want 90% anymore and I don't want negative 10 degree rotation, you don't have to reset those values. You can just click on a different guy. So this is a different clone source. They'll get saved as you go, and that'll reset those values. Isn't that wild? Panel is just sitting there getting ignored all the time. And now I'll go ahead and paint this and see what happened. Good enough. Oh my God, I lucked out on that one. And now I'll paint this stuff away, and I'll paint this stuff away as well. I don't think I'm going to get as lucky on this guy because there's no real end to this transition right here. So notice I did create a larger boundary and it's getting larger and larger, but over here, I don't think I'm going to cleave the hair away from the background. Oh my God, actually, this is working out really nicely. Look at that. I created an island of detail. Now I painted the island away. Am I making myself clear? If you were working on the same image, you might not have this kind of luck, but in my case, it did, and I'm going to call it a day. There's all kind of, you could do more stuff in this area. For example, you could switch to the polygonal lasso tool, and that would allow you to kind of click inside here just to create a polygonal lasso like so. This is what I would do. I'm going to race through this because it's boring. And then, because the next thing is more exciting, and now I'll go up to the select menu, choose modify, working real old school here, and choose feather. When's the last time you did that? Maybe yesterday, for all I know. Feather radius of 1 pixel is going to be good. Just a little bit of feathering. And then what I can do is switch back to the spot healing brush. And then I can paint in there. I can just paint in the selection. Notice I'm just affecting the selected area, nothing more. That could have gone much better. Anyway, that's one way to work. Here's another way. Let's try this instead. Healing brush tool, real healing brush, set a source right there, and then just go ahead and paint inside this region and press Control D, Command D on the Mac. I could mess with the diffusion value and fix that a little bit. I want to show you some more exciting stuff. Let's say that the next thing I want to do is reconcile this thing right here, kind of rebuild a detail. Well, I'll just show you in advance. I've created this path outline here in the paths panel. It looks like this. Notice that? I drew it with the pen tool. Those of you who know how to use the pen tool can draw something like this very easily. I'm going to skip that part, and what I'm going to do is turn this into a layer, a shape layer, by the way, a vector-based shape layer, by clicking on the eye layer, just so it appears in front of there. And what I'm going to do is go up to the layer menu, choose new fill layer, and then choose solid color, because I want to fill this with a solid color. And I'll just go ahead and call this guy edge, let's say. And notice, click OK, that I want you to see, well, we'll see it in a second. This is a shape layer. You can already see that. Notice that little icon right there in the bottom right corner of the thumbnail. That indicates that this is a vector-based shape layer. And then I'll just move my cursor outside the color picker dialog box and click here in order to lift that color right there. Click OK in order to assign it. It's not a very good match because of the border right there. Notice it more or less follows the contours though pretty nicely. We'll modify that in just a moment. And then what I'm going to do is switch to the arrow tool. It says path selection tool, but it has a keyboard shortcut that is of A for arrow. I'll change the stroke up here in the options bar to black. If you're not seeing black as one of your swatches, you can click on this guy and dial in black. And then I'm going to change this value, let's say the weight value to 20. And we end up with this, which is pretty good. And so now I'll switch to the direct selection tool, the white arrow tool, and you can get to that by pressing Shift A as well. Oops, I just did that to demonstrate, which took me back to the black arrow tool. Anyway, take this guy down. This guy wants to go over a little bit. Now what we want to do is mask away this extra stuff we don't need, the extra stroke. So I'll click on the Add Layer Mask icon down here at the bottom. There it is, at the bottom of the Layers panel. And I'll go ahead and press the B key, B as in brush, this guy right here, in order to switch to the brush tool. And I want the foreground color to be black because I'm painting things away. So press the X key to swap those two right there at the bottom of the toolbox. Go ahead and zoom in. And what you want to do is right click. And I don't know what the size is, but I am going to change the hardness value to 100% for a moment. And then I'll press the right bracket key a few times in order to increase the size of my brush. And I'll go ahead and click and shift click like so. Maybe do a little better job. Oops, that's a function of the angle of this control handle. So I'll go ahead and take that guy down a little bit so it's a better match. Maybe click that point and do a nudge as well. A few nudges from the keyboard using the arrow keys. Press the B key to switch back to the brush tool. Paint this stuff away, and if I'm lucky, I don't think I'm going to be, I won't reveal anything that I don't want to reveal. Actually, that didn't work half bad. And now I'll go over here and I'll paint this like so. Click and shift click is usually the easiest thing to do around these areas. Or drag if you're not going to paint anything. Oh, look at that. Another problem with the position of the anchor point and the angle of the control handle, potentially. So I'll just go ahead and drag this down with the white arrow tool in case it's not clear what I'm doing. Press the B key to switch back to the brush tool and paint this stuff away. Oops, went a little too far, didn't I? I'll just go ahead and undo that and try again and paint like so. All right, now you may notice that we have some kind of sharpening artifacts, if you will, where we have this highlight and then it kind of goes from a yellow highlight to kind of peach colored in the middle. And so what I'm going to do is press the M key just to switch away from the path. I don't want to see it, so I'll just control or command click to make it go away on screen for a moment. And well, that worked, didn't it? And now what I'll do is drop down to the FX icon down here at the bottom of the layers panel, and I'll choose inner glow because we're going to create a glow right here. And I came up with this color. And I lifted it, by the way, by moving my cursor out here and clicking in like a color right there. At this point, I'm not actually seeing the color, and that's because my eyedropper is set to see just one layer at a time, or something like that. Or I'm working inside the layer mask anyway. Let's just all agree that this is the color it should be. A hue value of 55 degrees, a saturation 20, brightness value of 100. Click OK. Notice I set my size value to 60 pixels. I don't want any interaction. I just want to replace that color. So I've got the blend mode set to normal. Click OK. And that gives us this effect here, which looks totally wrong. Look how it's kind of matching what's going on at the edges. However, it's not matching, we shouldn't see this sort of these other edges going on. So what you want to do is double click on an empty portion of the edge layer to bring up the layer style dialog box, and then notice this guy right here, these checkboxes. These are the problem solving checkboxes. If you look at this, go, that's not what I want. Try one of them. In this case, it's layer mask hides effects, because after all, we want this layer mask that I just painted to hide the layer effect, inner glow, as opposed to displaying it, as opposed to kind of cropping it, at which point click OK in order to get rid of that effect right there. And then what we got to do is some more layer masking. Click on the layer mask icon right there, this little white guy, mostly white, and press the B key to switch back to the brush tool. Right click, and we're going to take the hardness value down to 0% or thereabouts. Make sure that your foreground color is black. It is in my case. And then we just need to paint this stuff away like so that we have a soft edge. And the reason that the soft edge works, I brought out a problem right there, is that it eliminates the option for the inner glow effect to grab on to an edge. So that's cool. However, we are going to have to paint this guy out as well. So I'll just press the X key to swap the foreground color so it's white, like so. And then I painted that out. And we end up with this much improved effect. Actually, it's pretty close to perfect. There's some other stuff I could do in order to solve some other problems. But what about the colorization? I'm going to go ahead and click on this edge layer because it's the top layer in the stack. Actually, I'll click on this problems layer and get rid of it. Just press the backspace key to get rid of that guy. And now let's colorize everything. Well, what can I colorize? Well, we've got all this stuff going on that needs to be colorized along with the background. I could shift click and put all this stuff like so into a smart object. And you can have multiple layers in a smart object if you want, but there's no reason to in this case. I'm going to click on the top layer right there, and I'm going to press that keyboard shortcut. Don't know if you know about it, but it basically merges everything to a new layer. There is no command equivalent for it. You just have to press, mash your fist E, Control Shift Alt E on the PC. That's Command-Shift-Option-E on the Mac, and then you got yourself a merged layer. Don't bother to name it. We're going to get rid of it in just a moment. It's just there so that we can get uniform colorization by going into the filter menu and choosing neural filters. I covered this filter a few weeks ago now. Pretty awesome filter. And so all I'm going to do is turn it on. That's it. I'm not going to do any other stuff. Just auto color image. That's it. Looks great. I'm fine. Go down to the bottom. Scroll all the way down. And notice output options. Turn on output as new color layer. It's going to start looking like this, which is ugly. But those are the colors we want. Remove from the luminance detail, if you will. Make sure output set to new layer. It will. It's got to be because this checkbox is turned on. It says new color layer in it. Click OK, and we have a new layer. Like so, set to the color blend mode. Now this guy, that merge layer, we don't need it anymore. Press the backspace key, delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. It was just there long enough to establish the colorization. Then let's just go ahead and rename this layer because we're going to keep it colorize. All right, are you getting bored? Is this too much information? Feel free to check out because 99% of what we need to do is done. But I don't like the color of my t-shirt. It shouldn't be. Did you ever watch Breaking Bad? The main character, Walter White, his brother-in-law, Hank, they always had him in flesh-colored shirts. Go back and watch it. You'll see he's always wearing orange shirts that match the color of his flesh. I do not want to be like Hank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color of my shirt to blue. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do it quickly if I can. I'm going to grab the polygonal lasso tool. And just because it's easy to just do a bunch of clicking like so. And I'm just going to click around my shirt because this is the easiest way to select it. You can try to use the quick selection tool. It's not going to be any quicker. It's actually going to be slower. You could be more careful than what I'm being right now or not worry about it. And so just going to race through this. Notice I'm almost done. And I'm going to click a few times along the bottom because I'm trying to imitate a curve. And then I'll close it. And I've got this selection outline right here. Going to create a new layer. Control-Shift-N. Command-Shift-N on the Mac. I'm going to call this layer shirt. And I'm going to click OK because that's what it's going to be. I'm going to change the color. The foreground color right here. I think it's already this way, but is this light right color? No, this is not what I want. I'm going to change the hue value to 230 degrees, which is blue. I'm going to take the saturation down to 20%. So I'm going for a dark looking blue shirt. And I'll change the brightness value to 50%. And I'll click OK. And then I'll just fill this region, this selection, with the foreground color, which I just changed. And you do that by pressing Alt backspace here in the PC. That's Option Delete on the Mac. And then, all right, so we have blueness inside this selection. Now what you want to do is change the blend mode up there at the top of the layers panel to color. And we'll end up with this effect right here. Now, that's too light. I don't want a baby blue shirt. So what I'm going to do is go up to the layer menu. This is just the way I'm going to work. You can go your own way. New adjustment layer. And I'm going with levels. Second command right there. And that's going to bring up the dialog box because I chose the command. And I'm going to call this guy Darken, let's say, or Darker, either way. Use previous layer to create clipping mask. That's important so that you're observing that same selection outline right there. Click OK. And now I'll just go ahead and take the hue value. I'm sorry, that's not what I'm working with here. Take the black value right there. The first value up to 30 is what I'm looking for. And then I'll take the mid value, the gamma, down to 0.3. And then I will take the final brightness value to 235 is going to work out beautifully. At which point I'll go ahead and press the Enter key, turn key on the Mac to accept that change. And I'll hide the panel. And I should explain. When I said this is going to work out beautifully, is that what I said? I meant with one slight modification. We want that levels right there to actually do something. Notice it's not having any effect. And what you need to do, that's because of the way these layers are getting blended together. What you need to do is double click on an empty portion of the shirt layer in order to bring up layer properties, the layer style dialog box right there. Remember I was talking about these checkboxes that are used to solve problems in your composited image? This is the one that is a problem. Blend clipped layers as group. Don't do that because then you're just using levels to darken the blue, which is set to colors, so that's not going to affect the darkness of the underlying image. Unblend it, like so. Turn that checkbox off and you get some darkness. Isn't that awesome? All right, now I'll go ahead and click OK. So who would know? Well, that's what I'm here to tell you. Anyway, I'll turn off levels and I'll turn it back on. What is the problem, do you think? Well, I think the problem is, I'm going to zoom even farther in, that I'm wearing a dope blue t-shirt. That's not the problem. That's the good news. This edge right here, this bright edge. All right, how do we solve it? With the layer effect, FX. It's directional, right? It's only appearing on this side, not this side. So on the left, not on the right. So let's not apply inner glow. Even if we did apply a dark inner glow, let's go with inner shadow. Why don't we? And here are the effects I came up. The angle's negative 135 degrees already. The color's black. It's set to multiply. That doesn't really matter when you're working with black, but it could be normal. The opacity is 100%. And these are the values I'm going to come up with. I'm actually coming up with them now. A distance value of 20 pixels. Notice that I covered it up already. This is without the drop shadow. This is with it. The inner shadow, I'm sorry. But it's too hard, right? The size value is 0, so let's change it to 10 so that we have kind of a little bit of softness right there. That's it. Click OK, and that takes care of the problem. Or it really does a great job, I think, of retouching this image. So just so that you have a sense of what we've been able to accomplish, at least what I've been able to accomplish. I'll alt-click or option-click in front of the background layer right there, on the eyeball in front of the background layer. This is the original version of my avatar, complete with goobers at the top and some weird hairs over here on the left-hand side and this mustache going to nowhere and this bad jaw and this really, really tragic eye right there. This portal that doesn't reconcile down here at the bottom, and it's just kind of this weird monochrome. Well, it's kind of a, whatever. It could be like, a gradient map or something. Shut up, Deke. Here's the thing. Now we have all these wonderful layers. If I alt or option click on the eye in front of the background, once again, you can see this is the retouched image with the better hairs, the better mustache, the better eye. That's for darn sure. No goobers up here at the top. A reconciled porthole or whatever this is, as well as these wonderful colors, thanks to the amazing power, the still amazing power of Photoshop. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now, that was a lot, but it's just the beginning, which is why I have more at patreon.com/DeekNow. Then go to Deek.com, create a free account, and sign up for my newsletter. I'm Deke McClellan. This is Deek Now.